Have you ever noticed how easy it is to spend 20 minutes driving across town just to save a few dollars and then, without even realizing it, make a decision later that costs you thousands? It's something I've seen over and over again, especially as we get older and start paying closer attention to our finances. We become more careful, more disciplined, and in many ways, that's a good thing. But sometimes, that carefulness quietly turns into something else. It turns into being overly cautious in the wrong places. And that's where the real cost begins. Because the truth is, most people don't struggle financially because they spend too much money. They struggle because they try to save money in places that end up costing them far more later on. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever bought something cheap only to replace it again and again? Or tried to figure something out yourself to save money and ended up wasting weeks, months, maybe even years? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. Most of us have been there at some point. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. We're going to walk through 7 things you simply should not skimp on, especially at this stage of life. Not because you should spend recklessly, but because spending wisely can protect your time, your energy, your health, and even your peace of mind. And once you understand this shift, something powerful happens. Money stops feeling like something you have to guard tightly and starts feeling like a tool you can use to build a better, calmer, more meaningful life. Let's start with something that might surprise you a little. Knowledge. Now, we live in a world where information is everywhere. You can learn almost anything online for free. There are videos, articles, tutorials, even entire courses available at no cost. And on the surface, that sounds like a wonderful thing. But here's what most people don't stop to think about. Free information isn't actually free. It often costs you something much more valuable than money. It costs you time. And as we get older, time becomes one of the most precious things we have. Think about it this way. Let's say you decide you want to learn something new. Maybe it's managing your investments more confidently, or understanding how to use technology better, or even something simple like improving your cooking or your health habits. You could spend the next year jumping from one free video to another. You might learn bits and pieces, but it's scattered. There's no clear path. And before you know it, you've spent hundreds of hours without ever feeling fully confident. Or you could invest in a well-structured course, a good teacher, or even a trusted advisor. Something that gives you a clear path, step by step, without all the confusion. Now, yes, that might cost a few $100s. And at first glance, that can feel like a lot. But let me ask you this. What is your time worth? If spending a little money helps you learn something in weeks instead of years, if it helps you avoid costly mistakes, if it gives you confidence instead of uncertainty, then it's not really an expense, is it? It's an investment. And in many cases, it's one of the best investments you can make. I've seen people think nothing of spending thousands on things they don't truly need, but hesitate when it comes to investing in their own knowledge. And that's always puzzled me. Because the most valuable asset you will ever have isn't your house or your savings account or even your retirement fund. It's what you know. It's your ability to understand, to decide, to adapt. That's what shapes everything else. And once you start seeing knowledge that way, something shifts. You stop asking, how much does this cost? And start asking, what could this help me gain? Now, there's another area where being too careful with money can quietly take something important away from your life, and that's your memories. Especially the meaningful ones. Somewhere along the way, many of us start treating money like it's the final score. Like the goal is simply to end up with the biggest number possible. But when you really think about it, what is that number for? Money was never meant to be the goal. It's just a tool. And one of the most beautiful things it can do is help create moments that actually matter. Think back for a moment. Do you remember the times you saved a few dollars on groceries 10 or 20 years ago? Probably not. But I'll bet you remember certain moments very clearly. A wedding where everyone you loved was in the same room. A birthday that felt especially meaningful. A family gathering where stories were shared and laughter filled the room. Those are the moments that stay with you. And here's the thing about those moments. They don't happen all the time. Some of them happen only once. So, when those opportunities come along, trying to cut every corner, trying to make everything as cheap as possible, can sometimes take away from the experience itself. Now, that doesn't mean you should overspend or go into debt. Not at all. It simply means recognizing that not all spending is the same. Spending on things that create lasting memories, especially with the people you care about, often gives you a return that no savings account ever could. Because years from now, it won't be the money you saved that you remember most. It will be the moments you didn't miss. And when you begin to look at money through that lens, it changes your decisions in a very quiet but powerful way. You start asking different questions. Not just, is this the cheapest option? But, is this meaningful? Is this something I'll be glad I did? And that shift, it makes all the difference. Now, there's one more area I want to talk about before we continue, and this one might be the most important of all. Your health. If there's one place where trying to save money can cost you dearly, it's here. And I like to explain it with a simple idea. Imagine someone gave you a car and told you, this is the only car you will ever have for the rest of your life. No replacements. No upgrades. This is it. How would you treat that car? You'd probably take very good care of it. You'd keep up with maintenance. You'd pay attention to anything that didn't sound or feel right. You wouldn't skip oil changes just to save a little money, because you'd understand something very clearly. If that car breaks down, you're in trouble. Well, your body works the same way. You only get one. And yet, so many people try to save money in ways that slowly wear it down. Buying the cheapest food instead of nourishing meals. Skipping checkups. Ignoring sleep. Putting off exercise. And it doesn't seem like a big deal at first. It feels like small savings. But over time, those small decisions add up. Because your health affects everything. Your energy. Your mood. Your ability to enjoy your days. Even your ability to stay independent. And here's something important to remember. When you invest in your health, you're not just improving how you feel today. You're protecting your future. Better food, proper care, staying active, these things might cost a little more upfront. But they often save you from much bigger costs later, not just financially, but physically and emotionally. And more than anything, they give you something that's hard to put a price on. They give you quality of life. The ability to wake up, move comfortably, think clearly, and enjoy the people and experiences around you. And when you look at it that way, it becomes clear. This is not a place to cut corners. Because in the end, all the money in the world means very little if you don't feel well enough to enjoy it. And once you start protecting your health, your time, and your meaningful experiences, you begin to see money in a completely different light. And when you begin to see money that way, something subtle but powerful starts to change in how you make decisions. You're no longer just asking, how can I spend less? You begin asking, how can I make this count? That question alone can shift the direction of your life in ways most people never expect. Because the next place where people often try to save money is also the place that quietly limits how far they can go. And that is the tools they use every single day. Now, when we're younger or just starting out, it makes perfect sense to use whatever we have. You don't need the best of everything in the beginning. In fact, there's something valuable about learning the basics with simple tools. It forces you to focus, to be resourceful, to build real skill. But there comes a point, and you may have already experienced this, where those same tools that once helped you start holding you back. Maybe it's a computer that takes forever to load. Maybe it's a phone that constantly freezes. Maybe it's equipment that makes simple tasks take twice as long as they should. Or maybe it's something even more subtle, tools that just make everything feel harder than it needs to be. And over time, that friction adds up. It drains your energy. It tests your patience. And perhaps most importantly, it quietly takes something you can never get back, your time. Let's think about that for a moment. If a better tool, something faster, more reliable, easier to use, saves you just 1 hour a day, that's over 300 hours a year. 300 hours. That's time you could spend with your family, pursuing something you enjoy, or simply resting and taking care of yourself. And yet, many people hesitate to make that upgrade because they're focused on the price tag. They see the cost, but they don't see the value. Because a good tool doesn't just make things easier. It removes resistance. It allows your effort to turn into results more smoothly. It helps you feel less frustrated and more in control. And at this stage of life, that matters more than ever. You've already put in the years of effort. You've earned the right to make things simpler, not harder. So sometimes, spending a little more on the right tool isn't a luxury. It's a way of giving yourself back your time and your peace of mind. And that leads us into something that people don't often like to think about, but absolutely should. Safety and security. Now, I understand this isn't the most exciting topic. It's not something people like to talk about over dinner. It doesn't feel fun or rewarding in the moment. But it may be one of the most important things you ever invest in. Because life, as we all know, has a way of surprising us. Sometimes in beautiful ways, and sometimes in ways we never see coming. And when those unexpected moments happen, the difference between a small setback and a major loss often comes down to one thing: preparation. Think about something as simple as insurance. Many people look at that monthly or yearly cost and think, "I'll skip it. I'm careful. Nothing's going to happen. What is doctoral? You don't play rubber del salby." And for a while, that might seem like a smart decision. You save money year after year, until the day something does happen. An accident, a medical issue, damage to your home. And suddenly, the money you save doesn't even come close to covering the loss. That's the part people don't always consider. They focus on the small certain cost and ignore the large uncertain risk. But protecting yourself isn't about expecting the worst. It's about making sure that one difficult moment doesn't undo years of stability. The same idea applies to securing what matters to you. Important documents, valuable belongings, things that may not even be replaceable. Taking steps to protect those things, whether it's through proper storage, security systems, or simply being thoughtful about where and how you keep them, may seem like a small expense. But compared to the cost of losing something meaningful, it's often one of the smartest decisions you can make. Because at the end of the day, building a good life isn't just about growing what you have. It's about protecting it, making sure that what you've worked for, what you've built over the years, stays safe. And when you have that sense of security, something else happens. You feel calmer, more at ease, less worried about what could go wrong. And that peace of mind is worth more than most people realize. Now, there's another area where people often try to save money, and it usually comes from a good place. They want to be independent. They want to handle things themselves. They think, "I can figure this out." And sometimes they can. But sometimes that mindset leads to some very expensive mistakes. I'm talking about hiring professionals. Now, I know this one can be a little uncomfortable, especially if you've spent your life being capable, solving problems, and taking care of things on your own. But there's a concept I want you to think about. It's called staying within your circle of competence. In simple terms, it means knowing what you truly understand and being honest about where your knowledge ends. And that's not a weakness. That's wisdom. Because there are certain areas in life where small details can make a very big difference. Things like taxes, legal matters, financial planning. In these areas, one small misunderstanding, one overlooked detail can cost you thousands, sometimes more. And I've seen situations where someone spent a few $100s to consult with the right professional and saved tens of thousands because of it. Not because they weren't smart, but because the professional had spent years learning things they hadn't needed to learn. That's the value you're paying for. Experience, expertise, clarity. So, when the stakes are high, trying to save money by doing everything yourself can actually be one of the most expensive decisions you make. Because mistakes, especially in these areas, are rarely cheap. And more importantly, they often create stress that lingers. Uncertainty. Second guessing. worry. Whereas getting the right advice gives you something much more valuable. Confidence. The ability to move forward knowing you've made a well-informed decision. And at this stage of life, that kind of clarity is incredibly important. Because you don't want to spend your time untangling avoidable problems. You want to spend it living, feeling secure, enjoying what you've built. And when you start to see professionals not as an expense, but as a form of protection, it changes how you approach these decisions entirely. It becomes less about saving a little money and more about avoiding a much bigger cost. And once you begin to understand that pattern, investing in the right things to avoid larger losses, you start to notice it everywhere. You start to notice it in small decisions, in everyday choices, and especially in one area that many people put off for far too long. And that is long-term investing. Now, I know this topic can feel a little intimidating for some people. There's a lot of noise out there. Different opinions, different strategies, and sometimes it feels like you need to be an expert just to get started. But I want to simplify this as much as possible because at its core, this isn't complicated. It's about time. More specifically, it's about giving your money enough time to grow. You've probably heard the phrase compound interest before. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually very simple. Your money earns returns, and then those returns start earning returns of their own. Over time, that creates a snowball effect. But here's the part most people don't fully appreciate. That snowball doesn't start big. In the beginning, it looks slow. Almost disappointingly slow. And that's exactly why so many people delay getting started. They look at the early results and think, this isn't doing much. I'll focus on it later. Later becomes next year. Next year becomes 5 years. And before they know it, they've lost the one thing that matters most. Time. Let me paint a simple picture for you. Imagine two people. One starts investing earlier in life, even if it's small amounts. They stay consistent, they let it grow, and they give it decades to work. The other waits. Maybe life gets busy. Maybe there are always more immediate things to spend money on. A nicer car, a home upgrade, helping family, enjoying the present, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But the years pass. And when they finally decide to start investing seriously, they're no longer just building wealth. They're trying to catch up. And that's a very different situation. Because when it comes to investing, you're not just working against the market. You're working against the clock. And the clock doesn't slow down. That's why one of the most important principles you can remember is this. It's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market. You don't have to predict every rise and fall. You don't have to be perfect. You simply have to start and stay consistent. Every dollar you invest today has more time to grow than a dollar invested years from now. And over time, that difference becomes significant. Sometimes dramatically so. Now, for those of you watching who may be thinking, well, I'm already in my 60s or beyond, is it too late for me? The answer is no. It's never too late to make smarter decisions with your money. Because long-term investing isn't just about growing wealth for decades ahead. It's also about creating stability, generating income, and giving yourself options. It's about peace of mind, knowing that you've set something in motion that continues to support you. And even small steps can make a difference. Consistency matters more than size. Clarity matters more than complexity. And starting now is always better than waiting for the perfect moment, because that moment rarely arrives. So, when you think about saving money by delaying investing, it might feel like you're being cautious. But in reality, that delay can become one of the most expensive decisions you ever make. Because time, once it's gone, doesn't come back. And when you take a step back and look at everything we've talked about, a pattern begins to emerge. Money isn't something you're meant to protect from every possible expense. If that were the goal, the safest thing you could do would be to lock it away and never touch it. But what kind of life would that create? A very large savings account and a very small life. That's not what money is for. Money is a tool. And like any tool, its value comes from how you use it. Used wisely, it can give you time. It can give you opportunities to learn faster. It can help you protect yourself from unexpected setbacks. It can make your daily life smoother, easier, less stressful. It can connect you with people who have the knowledge you need. And it can quietly grow in the background, supporting you as the years go by. And along the way, it can do something else that often gets overlooked. It can help you create moments. Moments with family. Moments with friends. Moments that you'll carry with you long after the details of everyday life fade away. So when people ask where they should stop trying to save every dollar, I often think about these same areas we've shared together. Your knowledge. Your meaningful moments. Your health. The tools you rely on. Your safety and security. The guidance of experienced professionals. And your long-term financial future. These aren't places where being cheap makes you wealthy. In many cases, being cheap here makes life more expensive, more stressful, more limited. And the beautiful thing is, once you understand this, you don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to make dramatic moves. You just start making slightly better decisions, one at a time. You choose to invest in something that saves you time instead of draining it. You choose to protect something important instead of risking it. You choose to create a meaningful moment instead of skipping it. And over time, those small choices begin to shape a very different kind of life. One that feels calmer, more intentional, more aligned with what truly matters. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Think about your own life for a moment. Was there ever something you used to be very careful about spending money on, but later realized it was actually worth every penny? Maybe it was your health. Maybe it was a special trip. Maybe it was asking for help instead of struggling on your own. Whatever it is, your experience might help someone else see things differently. So if you feel comfortable, share it in the comments below. And if this conversation gave you something to think about, something that shifted your perspective even a little, go ahead and give this video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, The Real Years, where we talk about living with more clarity, more confidence, and more purpose, no matter your age. Because the truth is, your best years aren't behind you. They're the ones you're building right now. And every thoughtful decision you make brings you one step closer to living them fully.